Welcome back to Special Educators Resource Room podcast. I'm Jennifer from Positively Learning. Today's episode is going to tackle a deceptively simple question, but it packs a lot of punch. Should I keep the same independent work tasks every week? I've heard this question so many times, whether it is whispered with a side of teacher guilt or shouted in pure frustration. And here's my short answer. Yes, until it's a no. I can explain. Here's why we should stick with the same tasks. Let's start by giving ourselves a little bit of grace. There are valid reasons why you might reuse the same task boxes or file folders or binders week after week. In fact, sometimes it's exactly what your students need. Repetition builds confidence. Predictability builds independence. And reusing tasks helps everyone, including you, establish systems that are actually going to work. So if you are keeping tasks the same because your students are gaining independence, staying engaged, and completing them successfully, you're doing it right. But here's where it becomes a problem. Let me paint you a picture. You're knee-deep in the third month of school. You've finally found 6 task boxes that your students can complete without asking 500 questions or knocking over a pencil tray. So you breathe a sigh of relief. You print those same 6 task cards over and over again for the third week in a row. Does this sound familiar? Now here's the catch. If your student has already mastered that skill and is still getting the same task card over and over, we've gone from purposeful practice into busy work territory. And that is not where we want to be. So let's zoom out. What is the actual goal of independent work? It's not just to keep students busy so you can pull a small group. I know you didn't really think that. The real goal of independent work is to build skills and confidence in a structured way, while also giving you time to do things like lead small groups, put out fires, check in with paraprofessionals, or maybe just take a sip of coffee. It's supposed to serve everyone. But for that to happen, the tasks can't stay static forever. So here's when to keep the same tasks. There's absolutely seasons where repeating the same tasks makes sense. Here's your green lights. A student is new to using the system and still building fluency with routines. If the task is reinforcing a foundational skill like identifying colors or matching letters. If you're collecting baseline data and you need consistency across those attempts. If you're building up work stamina and independence is the priority over novelty. In these cases, please do reuse tasks. Let your students settle in. Let them be successful. That's the point of independence. But what comes next? Growth. How to know when it's time to switch things up. Here are your red flags. Your student completes a task in 30 seconds flat. It is clearly bored. You can't remember the last time you changed your tasks. You're feeling guilty assigning it again because deep down, you know it's not really helping. You've already marked it as mastered in your data binder. And if that's where you are, it's time to refresh. But that doesn't mean you have to reinvent the wheel. It just means being intentional. Content versus format. Here's my golden rule. This is a little teaching trick that I used all the time. Every task has 2 layers. The first layer is content. This is the skill being practiced, like CVC words or counting coins. The second layer is format. This is the structure or the type of task. Was it cut and paste or a clip card or a binder sort? When you want to increase the challenge or engagement, I recommend only changing 1 layer at a time. Why? Because it avoids overwhelm. Let me give you an example. If you have a student working on identifying beginning sounds and they've mastered it with matching clip cards, instead of jumping to a totally new skill like rhyming, try using the same skill in a different format. Maybe it's a matching file folder or interactive binder page. That one shift can spark renewed attention and deeper learning. This also works in reverse. For a student who has truly mastered a skill, for example, beginning sounds, you could change it to a new skill, like ending sounds, but keep the format the same. In this case, ending sound clip cards. Now, how do we actually make this doable? Because many times tasks don't get switched out because we're just so busy. Here's what I suggest. Create playlists of tasks that you're going to be rotating, and rotate these tasks every 2 to 3 weeks. These could be task boxes, file folders, work binders. Create a visual student tracker, just a very simple checklist system where you're going to jot down a task that a student used this week and whether you're going to bump the skill up, rotate the format, or you're going to just keep it steady. And batch your prep. Choose just one planning session a month and look at your students' data. Pick a new rotation of task boxes or folders. I didn't often remove tasks from our library unless we ran out of room. What I would do is I would choose 2 tasks for my students to work, and if it was appropriate, I had them choose 1 or 2 tasks. And yes, some always chose the same task week after week, but to me, that was okay as long as they were engaged. It's like picking a favorite read-aloud book. I also found this helped me stay organized. I wasn't always in prep mode. There was a nice balance between new tasks being added and old favorites. Now, let's say you are stuck in a cycle. You have a student who struggles with change. So if you are switching up tasks even just slightly, it could lead to a shutdown or work avoidance. This is actually common. And it's one of the reasons I loved setting up a task box system, because it made it easy to keep a visual layout consistent. For example, I'm using the same bins and I have the same structure. And then you can slowly try to introduce new content, but it's embedded in this very familiar framework. You could always use transition cues like, this one looks like your favorite puzzle, but it's for counting by 5s now. This can help ease that anxiety of new, while also still slowly increasing that level of skill. So here's my hot take. Keeping the same task for multiple weeks can be fine, as long as you know why you are doing it. But if you're keeping it the same because you're out of ideas or out of energy or out of time, that's not sustainable, and it's not serving your students or you. You want to let your systems do the heavy lifting, not you. You want to set it up so that this library can replenish and you're not always in prep mode. You want to use observation to help guide your rotation and let your students grow. This is how you can use independent work the way it's meant to be used. Back to the original question, should you keep the same tasks every week? Sometimes yes, just not forever. And when it is time to refresh, you do not need to panic. You've got resources. I'm going to drop links to some helpful blog posts to help you set up a system that's going to run itself. I will put those in the show notes. You've got support, and I am here cheering you on the whole way. Thank you so much for listening. And if you love this episode, please hit follow or subscribe so you never miss a boost of practical support. I'll catch you next time in the Special Educators Resource Room. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'm dying to ask, what'd you think? Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe buttons so that you never miss an episode. You can find the show notes and links for everything mentioned in this episode at positivelylearningblog.com. See you next week for more special education solutions.